You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those birds! Birds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got us a family here. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast, the official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast. Joining us is Brian Young.
God, I love being a turtle!
The Turtle Dork.
So what are you selling? All kinds of shit? But I don't have to sell this, because this shit right here sells itself.
And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson.
Quick, suck it before the venom reaches my heart.
Wife Dork.
Can you float through the air when you smell a delicious pie?
And Brad Gullickson.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon.
And Mouth Dork.
Anyone could wear the mask. You could wear the mask.
And I'm your host, Darren Smith.
Warm. Warmer. Disco.
The Disco Dork. Where's that wind coming from? We're in the basement. And welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast.
Yay! Let's review Mowgli again.
What happened?
Oh, man.
It was
Mowgli
okay.
again. We weren't there for it.
You missed that train. Sorry,
Everybody
B.
was British.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, all the voices were British.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were.
Colonialism.
We missed that point.
Oh, I did not notice that. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's everyone's weekend, Dork?
Great, because Lisa and I are alive.
These guys
Yeah.
survived.
We did not die in a fiery wreck like we could have very easily.
Instigated by nothing, sudden and complete death.
Look, you all need to chill out on the Fast and Furious movies, apparently.
Dude.
Okay?
Dude. We were coming out to join you guys for the Long Kiss Goodnight screening.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
We watched it that night at 8 o'clock in solidarity.
And it was amazing,
when we
right?
got home. Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
I loved it. But on our way to Winchester, we were driving down Route 7. I was doing about 70, and I saw a pothole coming up, and I swerved to miss it, but my back left tire hit it hard, so hard that it damaged the rim of the actual tire.
The tire just exploded.
And the tire exploded.
Wow.
And rather than just experiencing the break and, let nature and the mechanics slow us down, I slammed on the brakes myself. Lost control of the car, did this fishtail situation, went across both lanes, and then I spun the car.
The tires just let go.
360. And when this was happening, Lisa's words to me were, Brad, get the F in control of your car.
That is not how it happened.
That's
Every
exactly
time
how
Brad
it goes
retells the story, I get angrier, and then I swear, I was trying to be calm in the situation.
She was
I said,
serious.
clearly Brad has lost his mind. And I said, Brad, just get control of the car. I thought that was like an amazing suggestion.
Well,
in
I
the
didn't get
situation.
control of the car. I spun it, and in the spin of the car, we went down the off-ramp backwards towards the guardrail. And I remember looking backwards as we were flying down the freeway, and I saw the guardrail coming right at us head on. And I had the thought, oh shit, I've killed me, and I've killed Lisa.
Oh, my goodness.
And then we missed the guardrail head on, and we hit the side of the guardrail, and the guardrail slowed us down as we slid down the entire off-ramp.
If that pothole had been anywhere else on the road.
Or if there had been any cars around me at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask if there was any cars around.
No, but,
No other cars were involved.
We had several cars drive by us as I was in shock behind the wheel and ask if we were okay. And the first 5, I was like, yeah. And then like the 5th guy was a volunteer fire department. And when he asked us if we were okay, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. He's like, well, I'm going to help you anyway. And then he pulled up and he began to help us. So then eventually the police showed up and then we towed our car back.
But we don't even have whiplash. Like literally just like For
It was
as
stunning.
crazy as the accident was, is how fine we are. It was an insane accident, but we are 1,000% fine.
So
Maybe
weird.
a little bit jangled nerve-wise.
You know,
but other than that,
your Fast and the Furious comment, like it really, it felt like suddenly I was Vin Diesel.
No, it sounds like you were a gaijin and you haven't watched Tokyo Drift enough.
That's probably
maybe you
true.
should go back and rewatch that
Yeah,
one. Well, I'm just glad you both are
Don't
okay.
slam
we
on
were
your brakes.
sad to miss the record, but the most important thing is my fistful of mentors is Buffy and Giles was my 5, Doc Brown and Marty McFly 4,
Yeah.
Jaime and Beatrix Kiddo 3, Lisa in support the girls of all of the other. Yeah, that's my number 2. And my number 1 is Philippa Giorgio and Michael Burnham from Star Trek Discovery.
Okay.
What about you, B?
I can't remember.
When we got in the accident, I was just putting my finishing touches on my fistful.
Yeah.
Which Brad rudely interrupted by crashing the car.
Yeah.
And I was very calm. Who kept their shit together? I called our insurance company.
You did.
I
I
went with your dad to
a
pick
volunteer
up.
fire department change my tire. That's what I watched.
It was not at all emasculating.
Super emasculating.
We are just two city slickers.
But
That's
like,
what it
what's
felt like.
crazy is like that. So the tire got completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And then it turned out my spare was flat.
Huh?
Yeah, my spare was flat. So that's why we had to get the tow. But it's not. I wouldn't want to drive all the way back to Reston from Winchester on a spare anyway.
Especially if how would you get? Well, no.
It's one of those things where like, you know, it was a near miss, but I still destroyed my front bumper, my back bumper, and 2 doors.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to drive that back. Yeah.
We got one long line of just destruction.
Anyway, wouldn't recommend it. So Week in Dork was great.
I'm glad you're all okay.
Yeah.
Brian, how was your boring week in Dork?
Boring. Yeah.
You did any of that?
Any death defying?
No near death collisions or
okay.
anything like that. So yeah, just comparative to that, it was pretty boring. Got to watch a couple things. Was in the theater this past week. You know, this is December, so there's a lot of catching up, a lot of rewatching, a lot of got to get ready. In the next 2 weeks, you know, plug. We got our top 10s, not top 10s. Everything's coming up quickly. So, with that being said, there's a new film that came out starring Natalie Portman and Jude Law called Vox Lux, about a pop singer. It's very interesting because they don't give you a lot of details on IMDb. Basically, just one sentence for.
Even the trailer doesn't show what
really doesn't.
is going on in that movie.
It gives you little snippets, and I kind of knew going in vaguely what the story was about, but IMDb tells it as an unusual set of circumstances brings unexpected success to a pop star. And it was interesting talking off air with you, Brad, about this as far as like, and I don't want to give too much away because this is a film that just was released and I don't think it's released wide. So there are people who want to go see it. But
you guys are very thoughtful to our listeners because they did not care about spoiling the shit out of this movie for me in this room before we were recording.
Because it's so not a Lisa movie.
It's super vomity, apparently.
No?
Oh, yeah, there is.
Yeah, not super, but yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a Darren movie.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. You think so?
It sounds like there's a lot of poor decision making, and Darren is not a fan of people making bad decisions.
Yeah. The movie is very interesting. There's something very tragic that happens at the beginning of the film. And Natalie Portman's character, who we see as a young 14-year-old girl, survives this tragedy. And out of that she becomes this pop singer. And becoming this pop singer, we kind of fast forward to when she's Natalie Portman. I think she was 31, so about 15, 16 years later.
Yeah, it opens in 1999 at the turn of the century.
That's right, 1999. And then we flash forward to 2017, about an hour into the film. So we spend a good portion of the film, actually I would say the majority of the film, with the younger version of Natalie Portman's character, whose name is escaping me at the moment, which is Celeste. Celeste, and who played young Celeste? Because she was really, really good. Young Rafe Cassidy. I don't know what else she's done, but that's so interesting. So she actually played her daughter as well.
Yeah. You didn't pick up on
I
that?
thought when I was looking at her in the scenes with Natalie Portman, I was wondering if that was her. So, this is an interesting film. This is.
I was confused at first because they don't indicate that, and then suddenly the same actress is there, and it's like, oh, hold on, is this actually the same person? Oh no, it took me like a few seconds to figure out what was.
They
happening.
do kind of change her up a little bit, but
enough to completely confuse Brian.
a little bit, yeah. Well, I'm not good at recognizing actors or anything like that. On
White
screen.
people all look alike. I know.
little bit. No, but no, I found the movie to be fascinating, especially like just the characterizations that we see going Celeste, and as she becomes this pop star, and then her being guided by Jude Law.
Oh
who
man,
gives a great performance
So
in the film, but it's not necessarily the most likable or the most trustworthy.
there aren't a lot of likable characters in this film.
Not really. But so as we flash forward and we see Natalie Portman's character, we can see how her success has kind of changed her. Because in the beginning, they are a very kind of religious household, the way she grew up. And you can see her kind of moving away from that as she becomes older into this pop star that she's become. And that does kind of play a bigger part into the story because as we learn at the end of the film, and you mentioned this, Brad, too, it kind of recontextualizes everything that we saw before. But they do kind of drop little hints. Throughout the film, especially like with younger Celeste. But I don't know, man. I found the ending was a bit abrupt to me, but it does make you think about everything that you saw before, and it's a fascinating film.
I caught it at Tyson's Corner, and there was like Chris was there, physics.
Yeah.
He was in the third row, and like the whole movie, I'm like, that guy looks like physics. Is it physics? And I'm in the fifth row, and then I had a family behind us, and that was it. Like it was an empty theater.
Yeah.
With that family behind us, super confused by that ending.
Yeah.
And it was nice to come out and talk to Chris about the movie and work through it. I think I'm with you. Like I didn't love the film, but I certainly didn't dislike it. Like some of the people we know.
Yeah.
And it was one of those movies where when it finished, I wanted to watch it again, or I'm curious to see what my second watch will be like when I eventually do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a movie I'm going to rush to want to go back and rewatch, but I thought because the performances were really strong, specifically Natalie Portman and Rafe Cassidy and Jude Law, actually, it really got me engaged into the film, and especially with the story.
Well, and Willem Dafoe's narration I found incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
So is it going to end up being on the Dorkies? Are we going to hear about this again?
No.
What about the not top 10?
No.
This is the last time you talk about it?
Probably so.
I agree.
So where does the title come from?
It's an album title.
It's the title of the next album that she's working on. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But doesn't Vox Lux mean something like rich voice? Was in Latin Vox?
Yeah, it's a Latin thing.
Lux.
We don't actually research Latin to know the answers to movies that we give 3 stars to, Lisa.
No. Excuse me.
This isn't a review cast. I don't care.
Oh, damn. All right.
Brad said it. I didn't, but I agree.
Damn. All right. Well, I care, Lisa. I took Latin for 4 years.
Did you really?
And I got straight A's, and I did nothing in that class. I only passed because the basketball team was in there, and coach was the teacher, so yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, all right. That's all you got for your weekend, Dork?
Yeah, I mean, Buster Scruggs, I saw. Brad, I know you loved it.
I saw your letterbox. You loved it too. Thank you.
There you go. That's all that needs to be said.
No, you had a 2.5, so that was like middle of the road. It was all right.
Well, it's an anthology film, so 2.5 means I liked half of the short stories, and then the other half, well, you know.
Okay.
But it's a gorgeous film. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, one thing you could say, and I don't know if Deakins worked with.
No, it's a different guy.
But Coen brothers, man, especially like when they get into that realm of Westerns, man, they just, whoever does their cinematography knows how to film a lot of those landscapes. It just looks lush and beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Wife Dork.
It means the voice of light or the light voice.
Yep. Actually, which is kind of interesting given the ending of the movie.
You're welcome. It took me exactly 30 seconds to Google that.
That's 30 seconds I don't have. I'm a busy man.
I am using every second to enrich our listeners' education and experience.
I think it's indicative of how much I enjoyed that movie, where it's like, oh, that was interesting. What's that title? I don't know. On to the next film.
There we go.
Damn.
Of course, I come from music school where we all pretentiously refer to our voices as our voces.
Well, I appreciate Lisa calling Brian and I out as crappy audience members.
Oh.
So thank you, Lisa.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right, Wife Duck, how, besides your vehicular escapades, how else was your weekend, Dork?
My weekend dork was great.
Yep.
She's driving around in a rental car.
Yeah.
That's true. And oh my gosh, so much has happened to cars since 2007. A backup camera is, for me, a game changer. I still can't parallel park, but now at least I get close to the curb. So that is good. Generally, if I have to parallel park, I just stop my car in the middle of the road and get out.
Like you're waiting for the valet to come get it?
Yep. But I shrink away because I cannot park next to the road. But I can with a backup camera.
All right.
But it's right before the holidays. I'm trying to get a lot of work in before vacation because when you are self-employed, you take time off. Nobody pays for that time off. So I've been filling every spare moment. So a lot of my dorkiness has to be consumed at home between things. So I'm going to talk about 2 wonderful holiday baking series that are right now on Netflix.
Nice.
I'm going to start with Nailed It. Now, I know I've had a controversial opinion of Nailed It. I think as a baking show, it has 0 merit. Just to quickly review the premise of Nailed It. The idea is they take 3 inexperienced bakers and they give them 2 challenges to make these incredibly elaborate baking creations in an insane amount of time. And the contestants have 0 sense and no idea how to bake. And then their end product looks terrible, and then we all laugh. But what saves it for me is, 1, it's a game I could totally win if I just posed as a really poor baker. Because I can bake a thing, but my finishings are imperfect. No, that's a lie. I finish things impeccably. I would really have to. It would be a major farce for me to go on that.
Wow.
As an inexperienced baker. I mean, these people don't even know that if you fill your cake pan all the way to the brim, your cake will never finish. They just
What a bunch of dummies.
That's a thing?
If you try to wrap a hot cake in fondant, it'll just slide off. They just don't know those kinds of things.
What dummies right there.
But what saves the show is the amazing host, Nicole Byer. She is a stand-up comedian who is so funny, and she has a way of lightly teasing the contestants that is so loving and yet insulting.
Oh.
I think she really creates a fun vibe on this show. And
Nailed It is not a cooking show. It's a comedy show, Lisa.
It's a comedy show. Yeah, I suppose.
Get off that high horse of yours.
I can't. It's made out of fondant and it's beautiful. But they've had for their holiday shows, they've had some really wonderful guest hosts that really have been making my holidays, including for their New Year's episode, they had Jason Mantzoukas.
Yeah.
So fun.
He was great.
Yeah,
Aaron.
of course.
He's an IdMod favorite. And he he was the New Year's episode, and he would randomly just start yelling 10, 9, 8, and it was just so fun. Oh, and also this is an extra added challenge. Deathly allergic to eggs, so none of the bakers could bake with eggs. Though I don't think that they cared really one way or another. Lauren Labkiss was a guest. She shows up a lot on Comedy Bang Bang, but you probably would recognize her from the first Jurassic Park movie of the new Jurassic Park movies.
They're called Jurassic Worlds, Lisa.
Whatever. She was in Jurassic World 1. She was
The assistant lady?
No, she was one of the 2 nerdy computer people.
Yeah.
That maybe seemed like they were going to fall in love, but then they didn't.
Jake Johnson from Spider-Man's the other guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because he had the little toys on his dick. Okay, yeah.
I remember her.
Yeah. And so she did an episode. I've lost my notes, so I'm just filling airtime. But another lady we like. What's her name? Oh well, Wikipedia. Nope. Here it is. I'm gonna tell you. Kate Berlant. Turns out, wonderful. Oh, you know her from Sorry to Bother You. She was the lady in the elevator.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's great in that movie.
She's great in that movie. Horrible on Nailed It.
No.
She's supposed to be this amazing improviser. Does not have a lot to say about baking. She mostly just made faces.
Oh.
But
I thought you meant horrible like at baking, but like you just mean her presence?
Yeah, she's
not as entertaining.
She just didn't have a lot to say. She was standing around. She was vaguely supportive of the whole thing. Not to insult her. I shouldn't have brought her up if I was going to talk negatively of her. But she was only okay. But then in contrast, I did watch the Great British Bake Off holiday shows, and
those are cooking shows.
Those are cooking shows. But Brad was like, "How come?" Because I was like, after I'd watched Nailed It, it's just like eating a ton of candy. That was Brian. It's just like eating a ton of candy, and you're all sugared up, and you're like, you just want to do hair of the dog, just continue eating candy so you never feel the crash. Yeah. So I was like, I wish there was more holiday Nailed It. And Brad was like, well, have you watched the Great British Baking Show holiday specials? And I was like, no, because they're not really competition shows. For some reason, I thought they were going to be like the master classes.
Yeah. So wrong, Lisa.
And I was wrong.
It's a good thing you're married to this guy.
So I watched them. There's only 2 episodes, but...
They're competitions?
Yeah, so they have the new judges. Paul Hollywood is still there, but Prue Leith is the new. Like Mary Berry has retired and Prue Leith has come on. I like her okay. She brings up calories too often, like on a baking show.
Is that a buzzkill?
She says, "Oh, it's worth the calories," and that sounds like something my mom would say, and it's just triggering. But I like her. I still enjoy the show a lot.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the new people. They're no Mel and Sue, the new hosts type people, not judge people.
Do you feel like they have the potential to grow on you? Or
I love Noel. I love them both. They're just different. You know what I mean? But for these, there's only 2 holiday episodes, but they bring together different bakers from all of the seasons I've already seen. They must have purposefully only picked bakers from the seasons that have appeared both in the UK and America, because I knew all of the people. So they had Val, who is like a dotty grandmothery type who loves to like do calisthenics while she's baking, and she's so fun. And then there's Selassie, who is so cute and chill. And even though I know that he's been taking like professional patisserie classes, so I think that's an unfair advantage. And Becca and Paul is the one who made a lion out of bread, and it was like the best thing.
Like a lion, like
yeah, like he for one of the challenges during his season, he made a lion out of bread. I can't describe it anymore. I simply don't know enough about bread.
I've seen it. It does look like a lion.
And it's amazing.
But just like the face, like the head, not the whole body.
Like the mane and stuff.
Yeah, the mane and the whole deal. I don't know why Brad is playing it down. Both Brad and Brian are checking their phones and are on their laptop while I'm speaking.
Because I don't care about what you're talking about.
He doesn't. But on the other episode had Rav, who I like to see again because he's a guy who's like super good on his flavors, but like he has a time management issue.
Oh, yeah.
Benjamina, who was my favorite from her season. She was on with Selassie in season 7, and she almost made it to the very end, but she didn't quite.
Did it make you sad?
It did make me sad. No. And then there was Rob, and there was Sandy. And, yeah.
So, did you come away inspired from any of this shit, Lisa? My stomach needs to know.
Every year, I want to make a gingerbread house,
but
it never happens. Because guess what?
What?
Christmas is always happening around that time, and I have so much other shit to do.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So anyway, I should move on. I could talk about this forever, but I would also like to make a mince pie. Those look amazing. Super fun. Pie? A mince pie. It's like a British thing, but it's like a little. It can be full size, or it can be like a little. They made like little bite size mince pies, and they make it out of like like the stuff you would stuff into a fruitcake, but they like cook it down in like the syrup and then you put it inside a pie, and it looks amazing.
Never heard of that. All right.
I know. So, yeah, one of my goals for next year is to get back to the baking blog. There's just like, you know, Brad and I, not to brag, 2 podcasts and trying to get writing done and still having to go do work and I've already gotten rid of all my friends, so it's nice to take some stuff off the plate. No more friends, ignoring my family. It's all about content creation now. It's just me and words here to the end. So anyway, so I hope to get back to the baking blog.
I hope you get back to your friends.
Nah. You know what? I feel lighter without them, frankly.
Jeez. All right. All right, Brad. How was the rest of your week in Dork?
Also great. I saw those 2 cooking shows.
Yes, he did.
They were really entertaining.
Yeah.
But you know, when Lisa watches those things, I want cake. Like give me mincemeat pies, give me cake, give me fondant. I want all this stuff that they're playing with.
Yeah.
He's chasing the dragon because I've stopped making scones. There's been no baked goods in this home.
It's been super lame, Lisa. Get back to being
no
the baked
white
dork.
flour.
Yeah.
But like Brian, with the Not Top 10 coming up next week and the Dorkies the week after that, I've been trying to cram as many movies into this week as possible. Mm-hmm. I just crossed 600 films for the year.
Yeah.
High five, everybody.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And yeah, so I finally saw Beast. I finally saw Leave No Trace. I saw Hearts Beat Loud, Film Worker. A lot of movies that people have been talking about and are showing up on top 10
You've
lists.
been talking about Hearts Beat Loud?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But you know, the best film I saw this week outside of our review cast, spoilers, I love Spider-Man, but the second best film that may or may not show up in the Not Top 10 and the Dorkies was Leprechaun Returns. He's back, guys. He's back. Don't look at me like that, Darren.
I'm waiting
it's
for you
so
to say
good.
Something else like The Mule or something.
I know that's what you thought. I was setting you
Are
up.
you serious,
That's
though?
comedy. Yeah, Leprechaun Returns is great. It's great. Now, it doesn't have Warwick Davis in it. He's not back as the Leprechaun. The Leprechaun is now played by Lyndon Porco. But he still is very much in the spirit of what Davis brought to that character 25 years ago, guys. And this is a direct sequel. And it actually stars the daughter of Jennifer Aniston's character from the original.
Very first. So this is a direct sequel to the first
Yes,
one.
yes.
Okay.
It's basically the Halloween 2018 of the Leprechaun franchise, but without any social context. It's complete trash. They go back to the house where the leprechaun was killed and throw down the well. And, you know, the way the leprechaun works is if any piece of him survives, he'll reconstruct. And so I guess there was some piece of gold and blah, blah, blah. And he comes out of that well and he's born out of the belly of, the actor from the original series that I can't remember his name right now. Mark Holton, who played Ozzy in the original.
My
the fire
ride's here.
department heard that I was talking about Leprechaun Returns and they're coming to put me out, but I'm burning too brightly, fire people. So Ozzy, he knows that the leprechaun is real, but they believe they had killed him. So he's watching out for these girls who are now living into this shack house. Why am I calling it a shack house? It's like a rundown house. It's a shack house. I guess we're going to call it a shack house. And he's concerned for the girls. And unfortunately, when the leprechaun returns, he returns through the stomach of Ozzy, and he's born like chestburster style. And that's the thing about Leprechaun Returns. Awesome practical effects.
Yeah.
So much gore. There's some chintzy CGI work here and there, but for the most part, the kills are inventive and splattery and delightful. Okay. And, you know, the leads, they're not just a bunch of dumb college girls. There's a little more character to them. I like the performances that they offer, but I'm here for the leprechaun killing people and making puns. At one point, when they kill the leprechaun the first or second time, because he keeps regrowing, they shove like a hose and they fill him with gas, and he explodes. And right before he explodes, they're like, "One shamrock shake coming up," and then he blows up. and that's hilarious, right?
When he explodes, is it green?
Yeah, green slime everywhere. So much green blood in this movie. Yeah. And in Army of Darkness, when the evil ash gets broken down into a bunch of little tiny evil ashes, happens to the leprechaun as well. So you got to kill all those little tiny leprechauns. It's good stuff.
All right. Have you seen the? It's funny because they also have revisited Chucky.
Aren't they like?
And now they're rebooting it
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, it's funny seeing that, and then this because this one's 2018. The Leprechaun Returns.
Yeah, just came out. Just came out last weekend.
Is that? Do you think we have any hope for a Critters?
Oh man! Well, the Critters box set just came out.
Yeah.
Arrow Video, no, Shout Factory just put it out, and maybe we can get that conversation going. I mean, of all those franchises, Critters makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
You don't need to bring back the characters of the Critters films.
Just the Critters,
just
and
the
then
Critters.
the two space people.
Yeah. Oh, you like Johnny Steele? It would be cool if Johnny Steele came.
Even not Johnny Steele. You have to have some intergalactic.
You need
I
a
want some
bounty
aliens.
hunter.
Yeah,
You need
I
a
want some
bounty
aliens.
hunter. You need Ugg.
Yeah.
And Ugg doesn't need to be played by the same actor. He doesn't have to be Johnny Steele. He could be anybody.
Because they morph their faces.
Yeah. You've convinced me, Darren. Yeah, we need a Critters reboot.
Because we could use some more creature features.
Yeah.
We as far as horror goes, this has been a banner year. For at the very least cerebral horror
Well,
and
we've been
emotional
talking
horror.
a lot about how great the genre is right now.
Right.
Brian's just seen Hereditary. His life has been shook.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lots of great quality, thoughtful horror out there. Us is coming next year. Can't wait.
Yep.
At the same time, sometimes I just want green splatter, like Leprechaun Returns.
Yeah. I can't be mad at that.
Well, it depends on what this Chucky reboot.
I don't like Child's Play. I'm not interested in having another one of those.
Well,
But I wasn't interested in a Leprechaun either, so make it bloody and splattery. Isn't it also going to be like a Child's Play TV series? Aren't there like competing Child's Play projects right now?
I have no idea.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Huh.
I don't remember hearing about the series. But I don't know. Is the movie theatrical or is it VOD?
No, it'll probably be VOD. Leprechaun Returns is VOD. It just showed up on my TV one day, and I was like, I'm watching this. And I had a blast.
Yeah.
And Lisa and I just watched Hearts Beats Loud, and that movie is great. It's not as good as Leprechaun Returns, though.
I love you, Brad.
Not top 10.
But you judged on a different scale, right?
Well, yeah, you judge every movie differently. But, I can say that I enjoy Leprechaun Returns more than Hearts Beat Loud. That's an honest expression.
True.
All right. I ain't mad at it. That's it for your weekend dork?
Yeah.
For my weekend dork, I revisited a film that I had seen before, but it wasn't one that came out this year, and it wasn't to be certain if I was going to put it on a not top 10 or my top 10 list. I was scrolling through Amazon trying to find something to watch, and I stumbled across Robert Townsend's directorial debut, Hollywood Shuffle. Came out in 1987. I had seen Hollywood Shuffle when it initially came out. Back in the 80s, Robert Townsend was huge in the comedy world in my household because of HBO used to have a comedy series for him, and I think they would do it annually. Robert Townsend's Partners in Crime, and it was a comedy variety show of sorts. So there would be stand-up acts that would come out, and he would introduce these new black comedians, both male and female, and in between their sets, there would be like these not really skits, but if you would picture a Living Color, in Living Color segment. Well, in Living Color would not have been possible had it not been for Robert Townsend and Partners in Crime. So those Living Color segments would break up the stand-up acts in his specials, right? And then at the end of every special, what is that man's name? Howard Hewitt would come out and sing or whatever. So, and he would have musical acts come out and perform. So he was all about bringing new, fresh faces to the public, fresh faces in comedy and fresh faces in music. So huge Robert Townsend fan. Because of that, some people that would work and produce those specials, one would be Keenan Ivory Wayans. He would write a lot of it. Franklin Ajayi, Craig Robinson. So there were these a bunch of brilliant black comedians who would work on these projects. Because of that, Keenan Ivory Wayans, with the help of Robert Townsend, spun off and created In Living Color. And that show would go on to be historic for presenting the world with Jamie Foxx, Jim Carrey, Jennifer Lopez, Tommy Davidson, Damon Wayans, Keenan Ivory. So I was always a huge fan of Robert Townsend. Anyway, in 1987, like the notable story behind Hollywood Shuffle was, and has always been, I think, that Robert Townsend took his credit cards. He funded this movie with his credit cards. He maxed all of his credit cards out funding this little film. And I want to say it was something like $5,000. It wasn't a lot, right? But it was the story of this guy who didn't have a lot, but had this passion for filmmaking and comedy and storytelling, and he did it on his own. And even back in the 80s, the late 80s, hearing that story and knowing that story, this is way before I got into filmmaking and, the process of filmmaking and the behind the scenes stuff.
And the El Mariachi, Robert Rodriguez.
Right, this is way before that. But I was always struck by that particular passion and dedication, right? So then you watch the movie. And so I'm gonna talk about the movie, the two separate viewing experience, the initial watch and 2018 watch. So the initial watch, back in 87 when I was younger, it was about the jokes, and it was funny, and the sight gags, and seeing John Witherspoon and a young Damon Wayans. It was just, I just took it at face value. It was just funny to me, right? I enjoyed the comedy because I was familiar with a lot of the comedians from his specials, and so that's all that movie. It was a funny movie from a guy who, his little engine that could story. It was a guy who, against all odds, really technically, statistically, wasn't supposed to make this movie, right? And he did it. It didn't go on to win any Oscars. He wasn't trying to win an Oscar. He was just trying to, as a black man, and company of other black actors and comedians and writers and producers, both male and female, put their face out and tell stories and tell jokes, right? And so that's all that really was. So I go back and I rewatch it 2 nights ago, I think it was 2 or 3 nights ago. And I gotta tell you, firstly, I still found it hilarious. The structure of the film is almost like Robert Townsend, the structure of his HBO specials, in that you would have scenes of the narrative. So the story is Robert Townsend plays, I think his name is Bobby in the film. And yeah, it is Bobby. And he's an aspiring actor, and he's in Hollywood in the late 80s. And it opens with him in the mirror going over his lines, and he's auditioning for the role of a pimp named Jimmy. And he's the starving artist. He's going for the auditions. He's hoping for his big break. He just wants to be an actor. But he also has to contend with his family seeing, and he has a younger brother who idolizes him. His younger brother is in the bathroom holding up the sides, feeding him lines. And he has to contend with presenting this image not only to the public of a pimp, but also to this young little boy, this little black boy who's looking up to him, and his grandmother, who she's no doubt seen some shit. She's lived through the civil rights era and the movement, and then even things prior to that, right? So to her, to see her grandson portray this type of image, for her, she's not happy about it, but she wants to support him because he wants to be an actor, and she can't tell her grandbaby no. So she'll kiss him, support him when he walks out of the door. You can see the confliction on her face about a black man perpetrating this particular stereotype, right? So in between these scenes of him, the drama in the narrative, he'll go off into like a fantasy. Like, so he'll walk into the audition and he'll see all these people sitting here, all these black people sitting here talking jive and over exaggerated jive, and you get the casting director who's saying, can you do it a little more? Can you be a little more black? and he's seeing that, and then he'll go off on like this fantasy of what he would like to do, and so it'll be like this. It'll be like a reenactment. So instead of Indiana Jones, it'll be Chicago Jones, or so there'll be these little things that break up the normal narrative, but they're all related to him as a character, to his aspirations, to his conflictions about what he's doing. And man, I got to tell you, seeing that movie today in 2018, post Get Out, post Black Panther, post Sorry to Bother You, post Blind Spotting, where we have this movement, this paradigm shift almost of representation, whether it be for women or just people of color in general. This movie was talking about that, like in 1987, the importance of representation on the screen. And as a person of color, both male and female, because both male and female representation is addressed in the film, I just found it so fascinating, because before I even thought to watch this movie, I think maybe it had been earlier that same day or the day before, I read this article about, this year and how great it has been for representation, but historically we've been here before, and is it just gonna be a phase again? It referenced that period of time. I want to say it was around 87 when New Jack City came out, and Spike Lee, on the cover of Time, it was Spike Lee, Mario Van Peebles, John Singleton for Boys in the Hood, and it was this it's almost like not really a black renaissance, but okay, we have these black voices with these powerful films. Is this the next movement? And then that kind of trailed off, and then we had the issue again of where's our representation? And so I read that article, and I just thought it was an interesting read, and something to consider in light of this, like I say, banner year. But then I see this movie, and it really crystallized it for me that we had that before, and this guy Robert Townsend was talking about the roles that African Americans are offered or expected to fulfill. So there's a scene in the third act of the film where he's on set, and this is his first day, and he overheard his grandma in the kitchen saying, like, I don't condone Bobby perpetrating these stereotypes. We already have negative stigma on us. We already are viewed as a certain way, less than, she's saying that, and he can hear her in the bathroom. So anyway, he goes, so he finally gets on set, and he's walking through the set, and he's passing other actors who are rehearsing for other roles for other films. So there's this white couple, and they're rehearsing a scene of them being in love, and an old Shakespearean style dialogue, and the over dramatic turns and looks and stares and things like that. And Bobby is looking at them, and he's holding his sides for Jimmy, you killed my brother. I ain't got no weapon. He's holding his sides for that because he's getting ready to go shoot that. But yet these people get to portray people in love, people who have human wants and needs and human expressions. And I don't know, I just found that moment so profound. And that was something like back in the days, like I didn't even catch that shit, right? So the reason why I asked you when I text you, had you seen Hollywood Shuffle, is because I feel like if you've been aware, if you've been watching all of these strong films that have been coming out these last couple of years, Moonlight, Widows, just like I said, Sorry to Bother You, all these films that we've been having show representation of black culture and black people being things other than criminals, thugs, just stereotypical roles that were cast as. I feel like this movie is it really puts things in perspective, right? It really makes me not want to be satisfied with just this year,
right?
With just Moonlight, with just this band. We should have. It shouldn't even be a thing to even consider, right? It should just be. We just had a bunch of good films this year, and it just so happened that half of them starred African American women. or were directed by African American women, or were directed by women, period. You know, it shouldn't even be a thing where we have to even focus on that, because we don't go, how many films were or how many films did, were white actors in? Oh, white actors had so many films come out this year. Like, they don't consider it's just normal. It's just the status. It's just what it is. We deserve that normalcy. People of color, women deserve that normalcy. It shouldn't be a big deal that, Ava DuVernay gets hired to do a big budget Disney it's no big deal when a white male gets, unless it's because he's popular as far as his body of work, but not because of his gender. It's no big deal that Steven Spielberg directs another film. It's just, it's Spielberg doing another film. And it needs to be that way for everyone, for women of color, for people of color, for minorities, period. Like, for everyone, it should just be that's what it should be. And so, I don't know, I just found it a really profound viewing. And normally I go to that movie just for the laughs. And, you see early John Witherspoon, you see a young Keenen Ivory Wayans, Damon Wayans, all the Wayans, the sisters, Kim Wayans, who would go on to have prominent characters and roles in Living Color. Like, all the people who started there were in this film. And then Robert Townsend, for him to make a film like this, the creativity in it. So there's one scene, Brad, I know you're gonna dig. So he's having dinner in a movie with this girl, and he's prepping himself and ready to go for this audition that he may or may not get. And just to decompress and take his mind off, he sits down on the couch, dinner in a movie with this girl, and they watch this detective show, right? But his fantasy kicks in, and instead of whatever they're watching, he's the star of it, of his own detective case, and it's in black and white, so it's playing on that Philip Marlowe, it's that noir thing. And at the end of the show that they're watching, when the credits roll, you cut back to them on the couch, and he's looking like so earnestly and honestly. He goes, that's the type of roles that I want to play. Meanwhile, having to rehearse for this pimp named Jimmy, and his girl, also a woman of color, and she says, you will. And it's a little cute moment, but in the grand scheme of things, to me, like, that moment was also profound, because I can't imagine how many countless minorities watch TV, watch a show with people who don't look like them, and say, I could do that, instead of being a thug, instead of being a pimp, a gangster, or someone who is not a decent person, to have representation of good people, or people who are, who matter, who are important. And I don't know, like, I just think that, like I said, if you've been watching all these films this year, I would highly suggest, if you haven't seen Hollywood Shuffle, to just check it out, just to see how so far ahead of 2018 Robert Townsend was, and where we would be as a people, and the things that we would want, and we still haven't seen. Like, and how, even though we've had, like I said, even when we made this progress, I feel like because we've been here before and there hasn't been consistency, I still think that is an issue. But it's highly entertaining. It's funny as shit, and just the variety of the skits and the creativity of the skits, I found, really enjoyable too. So it's not a long movie. It's like an hour and 18 minutes. I didn't realize that. But for what it's saying, what Robert Townsend was saying back then, and what this movie would birth as far as In Living Color, if we wouldn't have had a Chappelle Show without In Living Color, and without Hollywood Shuffle and Robert Townsend, we wouldn't have had In Living Color. So there's so many things that came from this movie and this man that, I don't know, I think a lot of people, it's due for a rewatch. If you've seen it, if you've never seen it, you definitely should check it out. So that was, one last thing. It's not going to take long. This is also what I did in my weekend dork. My not top 10 and top 10.
Yay! Oh no! He flashed the screen. I can't see it.
So it's done. So I did.
I saw it there. Leprechaun Returns is at the bottom.
Yikes. Not quite.
Because it was at the top. It's in reverse order.
It's in my not top 10 list. So when we come back from the break, we are going to do our review cast for Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. So hopefully you've seen it twice by now. If not, go see it again. If you haven't seen it at all, do yourself an immense favor. Treat yourself to probably one of the most wonderful holiday Christmas gift treats you can, and go see this film. Because it's great. And then we're going to spoil it too, as we love all over it. So yeah, so after the break, stay tuned for that. We'll be back.
Hey, this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
AfterMovieDiner.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. AfterMovieDiner.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for our review cast of Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. Hopefully you have seen the film, because we are about to get into some spider spoilers as we talk about the film. We're going to do our good, the bad, the ugly. Did anyone want to preface this review cast with any words before we get started?
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I watched it for the first time this afternoon, and I feel so underprepared to talk about this film because I was absolutely gobsmacked by it. I loved it so much, and I left the theater so elated. And then I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to talk about this film because I just haven't even had a chance to like formulate my ideas beyond just being ecstatic that it exists.
Does that sound familiar, Brad?
It does. Darren and I caught it 2 weeks ago now? A week ago for the advanced screening of it. Mm-hmm. It was so funny watching that movie that first time, because when the movie kicks off and first, like from the logos and how we see the Columbia picture, statuette, the woman rotate through various timelines of what that would look like. And then that stops, the shattering of dimension stops over the logos, and then the approved by the Comics Code stamp comes up, and then we kick into these really rad credits. Like from the jump, there was an electricity to the first watch. And seeing it with Darren, and I know you spoke a little bit about this on the last episode on your Weekend Dork, but at one point, 20 minutes in the movie, Darren leans over to me and he goes, Brad, I think I'm really loving this movie. And it only got better from there. Yeah. So there's, for me personally, certainly for Darren, I haven't talked to Brian really about it. I've talked to Lisa about it, of course. But to echo her sentiments, there's so much excitement around the feeling of this movie. Like for me, it felt revelatory. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, like he spends a lot of the movie running.
You mean Miles?
Miles spends a lot of the movie running from place to place, and there's this like tremendous sense of momentum where I'm watching the movie and I go, okay, for my good, I'm going to speak from this point to this point. No, actually it has to be this point to this point. But then there's this point to this point, and I'm just so mind-boggled by the whole thing that I'm just like, oh my goodness, what am I going to say?
If you're responding to any one element on the film, it this is for the people who haven't seen it, it can be overwhelming because, like Lisa said, and like I said earlier, and like Brad said, something great will happen. Something, whether it be the fact that you realize, okay, I love this character trait about Miles, or I love this this bit of voice acting, or it just doesn't stop. These things keep happening that you love. They keep coming.
Well, so we've seen so many comic book movies by 2018, right? I like to think of Blade being the kickoff point of the modern era of comic book films, 1998. So 20 years, right? And we've seen Spider-Man portrayed in numerous ways.
Probably the most of that in X-Men.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen some Spider-Man movies that I really love. I thought I had seen the perfect Spider-Man in Tom Holland. And coming into the Spiderverse and coming off of Sony making Venom, which was a movie I did not respond positively towards, I was super curious because of what we had seen in the trailers. The animation style looked very different than anything else we had experienced before. But I was confident that at best I would like this movie. And at worst, it would just be another Sony film I could ignore. And the reality is, this is the perfect Spider-Man film.
So
feels that way.
When before we get to our good and the bad, the ugly, I want to say this. This is my takeaway. Brad, you gave your takeaway from your experience watching that movie with me. Prior to that movie starting, we sat quite a bit and we talked quite a bit before the pre-show, before the trailers, and you echo what you just said. You said you were expecting to enjoy this movie. You said that you did not expect this movie to crack your top 10 or maybe even not top 10. But you said that, you were thinking it was going to be good or you were going to enjoy it at the very least. And I took that, not purposefully, into the screening of this film, but I just remembered you saying that. And the only reason why I remembered you saying that is because as you were noticing me enjoying and loving this movie, I was noticing the movie change you in that thought process, because it went from this movie's not going to be in my top. You said that it's not going to be in my top 10, but I'm just looking to enjoy it. And I watched that.
I forgot that conversation.
I did not. I watched it, but that's the thing. Like when you watch a movie with someone and you watch it take hold of them and affect them, and so that was a huge part of the enjoyment of my initial visit, because as I'm watching, I understood exactly why that was happening to you, because it was happening to me, and I wasn't even in that mind frame. Like I said, I was like, man, I think I'm loving this movie, and it definitely earned that and deserved that. So, all right, B, we're going to start it off with you, and we're going to talk about the good of, and you can't cheat and say the whole thing. Oh, yeah, because you wouldn't not be wrong, but
no, I have some points.
Yes.
Oh, well, first, I just love the fact that this movie, one of my main concerns going into the film was watching the trailers. I was concerned, how are they going to make this a Miles story with it being called Into the Spiderverse, and we know we're going to get Gwen.
Right, I remember us talking about how we were actually disappointed when the first Miles Morales movie was going to be a multiverse story.
Absolutely, and you can bring in all these different characters, but I think the movie finds a great way of centralizing Miles as the main character and bringing in all these other Spider people, and more specifically Peter Parker, and really telling a great origin story for Miles, but yet also kind of honoring a lot of the Spider-Man movies that came before it, and also kind of poking fun and making fun of it as well, as we see like a lot of the scenes from like Spider-Man 2 and even the dance from Spider-Man 3. So they're having a lot of fun with the mythology of Spider-Man, but it does focus on Miles and his character and making his story come forward in the whole context of the film. That was one thing that I loved about it. Of course, we could talk about the animation style. That I absolutely loved. The way they were able to kind of play with like the 3-dimension, like a lot of the, we talked about this too, where some of the backgrounds would look like how it would look when you take your 3D glasses off, and it kind of has like that blur.
Well, it creates a depth of field. There's people in focus, and there's people out of focus.
Yeah, and they use that as like a rack focus and depth of field, where you would see that kind of effect. And I thought that was an interesting way to use like rack focusing to make you focus on certain parts of the film.
But also on the first watch, a little confusing, because it's something you do not experience in an animated film.
No, you don't. So I thought that was very interesting, and also just the idea of having the graffiti art, especially towards the end of the film, when you see the worlds collide and you have the big end sequence, like all of that art style was very reminiscent of graffiti art that you would see Miles do like on the walls and just throughout the whole film. I think the movie kind of exemplifies that graffiti art style. So I thought that was really, really innovative for the way they were able to incorporate that style in the film with that character trait for Miles Morales.
While we're talking about the animation, I also really enjoyed how they kept a comic book texture over the top of everything. The way that they created shadows using diagonal lines and using the dots, and you can watch, like, there are times where you are getting lost in the texture, and then there are times where you forget about the texture and you're just lost in the movie. But there's always something visually extraordinary in every moment of the animation.
So, just to continue that thought, if the film had just been a live-action presentation of this story with Miles and Peter and Gwen and Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir, if we had just done like an MCU version of this script, it would be one of, like, I would love it. I would love this movie. I would adore it. And but it would feel like the natural progression of what we've gotten over these 20 years.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because it's an animated film, and it's the first one to truly embrace what Lisa's saying, the comic book, and show the impact of sound effects, to show how a thought balloon can make the experience even more intimate.
Yeah.
How a sound line, like, not only is, when he's singing to himself and he's humming along to that song, and he has that highlighter in his hand and he taps his throat, and when he taps his throat, you see waves of impact.
Yeah.
Or even when he's experiencing the Spidey sense for the first time, where I'm going like, what's going on? Is he having a panic attack, or is he just kind of going mad? And then you see the wavy lines and go, oh, he's having Spidey sense.
And then you have paneling going on, right? Split screening with comic book panels, something that Ang Lee tried to do and just couldn't make it happen. This film does it.
Absolutely.
And then you have, to me, the most beautiful use of a sound effect happens at 2 points. And the first time you see it happen, it doesn't even register. Miles falls from a building and you see,
yes.
And
then at the end of the film, after he's become Spider-Man, he's jumping from the ground into the sky, and you see, woo.
Yeah.
And a sound effect visualized, materialized on screen is like the best gut punch of an emotional gut punch.
It is, because it shows the arc of that character from when you see it in the first time towards when you see it at that moment.
Using comic book language.
And the thought bubbles, or just the idea of part of being Spider-Man is having these profoundly loud thought bubbles. Like, why all of a sudden is my thinking so loud? Like,
and so the way that these three directors, like, it's crazy that animated movies are nuts.
That was I didn't notice that. I didn't know that until today, my second viewing, that it was directed by three people, and that to me is a miracle.
Well, I mean, that's part of how animation is done. Like, you look at all those Pixar movies, not all of them, but lots of them have double directors.
Yeah.
But triple directors, Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman.
And for everything to be so coherent, concise, so flowing, the emotional beats hit, the comedic beats hit, the tone matches the visuals matches the characters, for all those things to coalesce perfectly when you got three chiefs.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's crazy.
And if you follow them at all online, Peter Ramsey in particular has a great Twitter account.
Yeah, I just started following him.
They're obvious. I mean, watching their movie, it's clear that they're not only a fan of the characters, but of what it is to flip through a comic book. Oh, and then the frickin' transitions with the comic book page turning.
Right.
The way they do that in the movie.
Yeah. And all of the origin story recaps.
And when Miles gets his own issue at the end when he becomes Spider.
It was great.
So, you take that then, where they're not only saying, well, we're going to do an animated take on this. It's not just like Kung Fu Panda, the Spider-Man movie. They're doing something truly original within the medium, and they're succeeding with the screenplay. It's Darren, you're right. I mean, it's amazing that this thing is. But I think it's also interesting reading some of the criticisms of the film. I had an interesting Twitter exchange with some troll today where he was calling it just looking like a PS1 cutscene, because the film looks so different than the style of animation that we're being fed today.
Yeah.
So I can see somebody going, "Oh, I don't know how I feel about why are those characters blurry? Why are they fading?" Like,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I could see it could be a little jarring to people who are used to a certain type of animation, a certain type of aesthetic, like the Pixar films or any type of other CG animation films that they see. So it could be a little bit jarring to that, but you kind of get used to it.
That's to be expected with the introduction of anything that's revolutionary.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because we're creatures of habit. We have known a particular cinematic language for so long, whether that be live action or animated.
Yeah.
And so when you break new ground in a way that this film doesn't do like a year or two leap in advancement. It is leaps and bounds ahead of anything that there's no other movie
to me
like this movie.
It's not a technological leaps and bounds. It's a conceptual leap and bound.
And creatively, yeah, absolutely.
It's them going, well, Spider-Ham looks like this. Looney Tunes looks like this. I want to put his style of animation next to a manga, an anime character. And then, like at the end, when we're seeing Spider-Gwen back in her home universe, her universe is painted like the artwork of the Spider-Gwen comic book.
This is my favorite interpretation of Spider-Gwen outside of the original two trade paperbacks, because Gwen Stacy in her timeline is like a punk rock troubled kid, and even right next to Brad, he has a Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, and it has the Gwen Stacy head that doesn't look like that Gwen Stacy to me. It looks very much like the Ultimate Spider-Man Gwen Stacy with the bangs and the long blonde hair. Like, I love the fact that they went back to that original comic book and really captured her essence.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else you got for the good? Before I pass it to the wife door.
Well, one quick thing. Well, I want to talk about the voice cast because it was very interesting to me because we talk a lot about, voice actors and casting in films. And one thing that I know people give a lot of flack when you have like celebrities in voice casting roles, because a lot of people feel like, well, when you do animated movies, those should go to actually train voice actors and not just put a celebrity's name in that role, because a lot of times they would do that just to sell the film, Pixar does a good job of really casting right, but
Kung Fu Panda is often labeled as like stunt casting, although I like Jack Black.
Yeah, but a lot of these third-rate animated movies, whether it be something like The Ant Bully or like Romeo and Juliet or something like that.
What about Rock Dog?
Yeah, they just want to flash like, oh, Mary J. Blige, John Travolta, Johnny Depp. It's like, okay, but with this movie, like you have Brian Tyree Henry, you have Shamik Moore, you have Haley Steinfeld, you have Mahershala Ali, you have Liev Schreiber, but listening to them, they really create a character with the voices that they choose for these characters.
Honestly, for that first watch, I was trying to figure out a lot of the voices.
Shamik Moore was the only recognizable person on my first watch that I knew. Everyone, and I'm familiar with the entire cast of that film, their bodies of work, their normal voice, and I didn't pick any of them up the first go.
Every time John Mulaney spoke, I was like squeeing.
Lisa and I know John Mulaney.
And
I was bouncing.
Well, Nick Cage too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah, but it's never distracting in the film, and I think it serves the film because it's not just great. They give great performances in these roles.
Like Nick Cage is doing maybe the goofiest caricature,
but it works.
But it's perfect because that's in tone with the Marvel noir character.
Yeah.
And this is the character that he's been wanting to play his whole life, which we discovered doing our research for Mandy.
Nice. Yeah, so I just thought all of that stuff, and it works in those really emotional scenes, like the ones between him and Uncle Aaron when he finds out, spoiler alert, when he finds out he's the Prowler and he gets shot, or the scene at his dorm when his father is talking to him through the wall, or even like today watching the film, the scene that really got to me was at the end when Peter B. Parker wanted to destroy the collider, and Miles tells him, he was like, look, you got to go home, man. And he was like, he's like, you're right, you got to take a leap of faith, and he lets him go. Like, that shit, like,
when he falls slack in Miles's hands, when Peter B. Parker goes, all right, you got this, you'll take care of the Kingpin, I have faith in you, and he goes slack. Like, the moment he goes slack, it's just Niagara Falls.
Yeah,
Frankie.
like it got me this time because that character alone, Peter B. Parker, like I could like connected with his reason, like his own insecurities about why he doesn't want to go back to his own dimension, and Miles is telling him like, "Look, I got this." Like, it's like you're making excuses for why you don't want to go back, but you got to go home.
Yeah,
and like, it was just great all the way around.
All right, wife dork.
Yes. So for my good, I want to talk about all of the little details that made Miles and made him so I met Miles originally reading the Ultimate Spider-Man Bendis run, and it like I had just barreled my way through all of Peter Parker's life to his demise.
This was so funny. I remember when Lisa was reading Ultimate Spider-Man and when they killed off Peter Parker in Ultimate Spider-Man.
I was devastated.
Devastated and mad.
I could not. Yeah. But then, I literally years later,
because I was like, Lisa, I've got Miles. You need to read these Miles Morales books.
Right. So I started reading Miles' story, and what I liked about Miles initially that I find consistent in the movie is that he does not really want to be the hero. He is not anxious for glory, and he's scared, and that was consistent. But then, like when Spider-Man: Homecoming came out, a lot of these things that differentiated Miles Morales from Peter Parker kind of got muddled, because now Peter Parker is going to a boarding school for technology, which was Miles Morales' story. Now, Ned from Homecoming looks a lot like Genki, and when we first saw that actor, I was like, oh my goodness, that's Genki. That's not Ned. Yeah. So like,
but the dynamics that are in Miles's book are very similar to the dynamics of the school in Homecoming.
Yeah, and so those two characters kind of got muddied. And so the details that they added to create a richness for this Miles, I found so beautiful. So first is his desire to make and leave his mark. So the graffiti art that he did, he would like to make stickers and stick them places, and he went out tagging with his Uncle Aaron and making this beautiful expressive piece that really reflected who he was in this moment. This like
no expectations.
Feeling just like kind of weird pressure, and so that need to express himself in that way, and then the way that played out into the way he created his own Spider-Man uniform that was unlike any other Spider-Man uniform.
Badass too.
Like talking about that. Marvel Legends box set of Miles Morales. Can you move over? So that does look like the uniform from the movie, but I think even like doesn't quite capture the gradation of the use of the spray paint on his costume and the fact that
also the action figure doesn't have the sneakers.
It doesn't have the sneakers
or the hoodie.
So the fact that played out in the story. Also, he has this kinship with his Uncle Aaron, which is in the Ultimate Spider-Man, but then how his Uncle Aaron became his Uncle Ben, but then wasn't. Because when Uncle Aaron was killed, everybody expected him to be like, oh, this is like when my Uncle Ben died. Oh, this is like when my Uncle Benjamin died. Oh, this is like when my Peter Parker died. Like, it expected to be this change in him, but that wasn't what Miles needed. What Miles needed was the approval and love of his dad always loved him, but the approval from his dad is really what he actually needed. I just love the fact that they were able to, nod to the original comic books. You see a lot of those, comic book references in there, but then they created this character that is so rich and so new and literally unlike any other Spider-Man.
I of course noticed this during my first watch, but I was really paying attention to a lot, and I picked up so much more on my second watch. that electricity, Brad, that we were feeling after the opening credits, it was deafening, apparently, because I had missed. I leaned over and asked you, who is that guy? I had missed when they said his name too. They say who he was like earlier in the film. I had missed when Peter, when the Prowler first comes, they say his name, and I didn't because I didn't pick that up.
Right,
so when it was revealed,
oh, you're talking about Tombstone when Tombstone first shows up,
right?
Yeah,
So
okay.
someone Kingpin says his name.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I didn't notice they said the Prowler's name when he first comes in his first confrontation. There were a lot of things I picked up, but anyway, I was really paying attention to Miles and what they were doing to make him fully informed, and I just came away feeling like he is such an earnest, and he genuinely feels like a wholesome person, an individual that, for me as an audience member, I believe in him. I want to believe him. I want the best for him. You genuinely care, excuse me, about Miles and his well-being and his decision, and you care about his willingness and to succeed. You want him to succeed, right? And I don't know. I found that really tremendous because I feel like it's a combination of the script and also Shameik Moore's performance that really gives Miles his soul. And I just found that character particularly moving, especially the second time I watched it. For all of the things that you said too, Lisa.
Another thing that I really enjoyed about Miles, and then it permeated the whole film, was his love and relationship to music, and that the music that Miles loved became the soundtrack for the film, and all of his huge emotional moments were reflected in the music that he loved. So just like close your eyes as an oral experience, it was really beautiful.
When he finally gets the black and red costume, he goes back to Aunt May, and Aunt May's like, "I've been waiting for you. Let's do this." Yeah. And he makes that costume himself. And when he comes out, and the woo, you see the woo, and then "What's Up, Danger" kicks in.
That's great. That's a great moment.
Oh my God, chills.
That's a great moment.
Yeah.
Is it for your good, Lisa? For now. I feel you. All right, B.
Yeah, I mean, like, to me, it's one of those things where, as I was saying, there's so many elements that you could focus on to be your good. You know, the animation, the character, the story, the perfection. I think where I want to focus my attention right now is, it's not really a mid-credits tag, but after the first batch of credits ends at the end of the film, a quote from Stan Lee comes up.
Yeah.
And the quote is, that person who helps others simply because it should or must be done and because it is the right thing to do is indeed without a doubt a real superhero. And that quote goes away, and then there's a dedication to Stan Lee and Steve Ditko as the creators of Spider-Man. And then you take that quote and you think about the last lines that Miles says, which was my quote at the beginning of the movie: anyone could be Spider-Man. You could wear the mask. Anyone could wear the mask. That idea that Stan Lee has talked about in the past, where what he loved so much about Ditko's design is it completely covers the skin, right? And you just look at the eyes. Anyone could be wearing the costume. And as fanboys, so often we get hung up on Peter Parker is this. Peter Parker looks like this. Captain America is this. Iron Man is this. This is what that character has to be that character. And by using the multiverse and Into the Spider-Verse, it says, well, actually, the spirit of Peter Parker is in all of these people. Yeah. You know, a ham, a pig could be Peter Parker and still achieve everything that we want out of that character. Yeah. Miles Morales can live the philosophy of Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility. And Spider-Man, to be Spider-Man, you have to get up. You get knocked down, you have to get up. And you have to fight the injustice that you see. And that's what Miles is doing in his own way. That's what Peter B. Parker is doing. That is what Chris Pine's Peter Parker is doing at the beginning of the film. It doesn't matter if Parker is blonde or if he's overweight or if he's a teenage girl and a robot. What Stan Lee was going for can be pursued in a variety of ways and expressions. And in relishing this splintering of the space-time continuum, they're able to speak directly to the philosophy of Spider-Man in a way that has never been done cinematically before. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I was watching this movie, and that this film would even consider tackling the big idea of Spider-Man.
It's interesting too, because thinking about this across other films, even with Homecoming, that idea of you got to get up, because Gwen Stacy tells Miles that too. He was like, when they're trying to train him, it was like, if you fall down, you got to get up.
And they all keep punching him. Get up, Miles. Get up, Miles. Get up, Miles.
At the end, when he's fighting Kingpin and his father is looking at him, he's like, "Get up, Spider-Man." And it made me think about the moment in Homecoming when he's under the rubble. He's
which is another classic Steve Ditko illustration.
Yeah, and it's just, it goes to that theme that you're talking about. It's like, you always have to, whenever you get knocked down, you always have to get back up. And it seems to be a recurring theme.
Well, it's a Marvel idea, really. Yeah. It's what Stan Lee brought to comics when he created the Fantastic Four, is that, all these people have crazy powers. Spider-Man has super strength, and Miles Morales has Venom Blast, and he can turn invisible. But they also all suck at being human beings, because we all suck at being human beings. We all have to progress. We all have to learn from our mistakes. Failure is part of success. And you see that in every single one of these Spider-Men in this film, but it's focused on Miles Morales and it's focused on Peter B. Parker, who, like, his introduction, when, let's one more time, and you see the mess that he has made even as Spider-Man, how he has totally ruined his relationship with MJ. And, he's crying in the shower, and he's just, consuming pizza as if it was his day job. The fact that he then comes to this universe and is like, okay, well, I can teach this kid how to be Spider-Man. I know what it's like to be Spider-Man. But in effect, Miles is also teaching him, right?
True.
And Miles saves him from killing himself, by going suicide by Goober.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. And that Stan Lee cameo, going to your point about the quote at the end.
Fits.
Dude,
eventually.
I mean, like, that Stan Lee cameo, the main cameo into the Spider-Verse, like, the idea that he hands the kid this merchandise costume.
And I was telling Darren,
I love he said, I knew him. I used to.
Yeah, I mean, and how poetic, like, that this particular cameo would happen right after his death. I mean, it's
a great one.
It's profound.
Here's the thing. The Stan Lee cameo, he's all over the movie. He's not just in that scene. I got tipped that he's in backgrounds of films, and so this watch, I'm going, oh crap, there he is on the bridge. There he is with his wife. Joan Lee is in the film.
Oh,
there he is over here. He's over here on this crosswalk, and he's all over Into the Spider-Verse.
Nice.
That's why I gotta watch it again.
I mean, that's why I gotta watch it again.
Because even after Brad told me that, I still didn't find any more Stan Lees.
I didn't know that.
I just got lost in this story.
What else you got, B?
I mean, like, I'm gonna move it on to you. It's a hard film just to. Like, when you love something so much, it's hard to be like, these are my good points.
Yeah.
I loved the fact that the Aunt May was like the cue for Chris Pine Spider-Man. Like, they even gave Aunt May a job.
That was Lily Tomlin?
Yeah, Lily Tomlin.
I love
Amazing.
Lily Tomlin.
Yeah. I mean, the Chris Pine Spider-Man, he opens the film. So after all the logos and the comics code pops up, he tells his origin, and he's the one who did Spider-Man 2 and all those scenes that reference that. He's got the lollipop. I mean, he's living the ideal Spider-Man life. And
he's probably the most perfect of all Spider-Men.
Yeah, well, he's Chris Pine, right?
Yeah.
So he's got to die.
Yeah.
And like, that was a huge surprise when they go to visit Aunt May. And again, that's another emotional moment for me.
Oh my
when
gosh.
Schlubby Peter Parker meets his dead Aunt May.
Mm-hmm.
And He's like, well, here, let's go back to the shed. And he goes, oh yeah, I got one of these. And then suddenly you realize that this Spider-Man is like Batman. Pretty genius. Because as much as the film adheres to the characters of the books, it's also not afraid to go, well, we have ideas too.
And they're good ideas.
And they're good
too.
ideas.
Yeah,
and they play to the theme of the movie.
Yeah.
And then when you see the spider buggy, you're just like, oh.
I know.
Yeah, so good. So good. For my good, I want to talk about, firstly, the directing of the film. There are, Brad, you mentioned earlier, like if they were to take all of this and do it live action, like it'd be. I envy you because I cannot fathom this movie in live action. I just do not. I refuse to. It just would not be the same. I don't even know
agree
how
with
you
you
would
100%.
Half of this shit.
I mean, I think you could shoot this script live action. It will not be this movie.
Right.
But I think you could do it.
Yeah, I would rather it because
of course I agree.
They take complete advantage of the medium. All the things that we talked about before we even got into the good, the bad, the ugly about the animation. What Lisa was talking about the the use of the dots and in the texture of the film and things like that. It's just phenomenal. But the directing of the film, like there are certain shots and camera movements in this animated movie that I just felt like, for an animated film, that shit is next level, and it doesn't have to be anything grand or sweeping. Just there's a shot when the Prowler first chases after Miles, and he hops on his motorcycle and he speeds past, and Miles is hiding on the traffic cone, right? And Miles waits for him to pass, and then he hops down and he crosses the street, and that camera comes down and it tracks him across the street and then down the sidewalk a little as Miles cuts the corner to the left. And it's something real simple, but the combination of the camera movement and the animation style, you have the comic book texturing, but then you also have the BMW that's on the sidewalk, that's parked on the sidewalk that Miles hides behind before he cuts the corner. It has a sheen on it that has reflective surface, so the light sources are bouncing off of it. So it gives it a real sense of something in this 3D space, right? But it doesn't look like how Miles looks. It doesn't look like how the Prowler looks. It's I just found the combination of the directing and the visuals to be arresting. That sequence in Aunt May's living room, that battle, that fight sequence with everybody in there. You can't shoot that shit live action like that. It was crazy, and how they have the paneling integrated in that when Aunt May's stuff is getting broken.
Yeah, that's not what I was saying. I was saying narratively, this is a great interpretation.
Oh no,
of
I'm not talking.
Spider-Man.
I'm just saying like this movie, done how it is now, it just couldn't be. That's why I love it so much, because animation affords you. It removes boundaries and limits. Half the stuff that Peter and Miles are doing physically in the Prowler, if that were in a live action movie, you'd have to CGI it against a real world background, and you go, oh, that looks like CGI, or I can tell that's not real. But you don't have that disassociation when everything in the film is as vibrant and alive as the main character.
And they managed to make everything different. They were like I mentioned at the beginning of this review, there are multiple scenes where like Miles is just being dragged from one place to the other.
Yep.
There was the train sequence where
great. Yeah.
So funny, and like seeing Peter B. Parker get the shit smashed out of his face.
Yeah.
And then there's going through the office invisible, holding the computer.
Did you notice the first time, and your first time, Lisa, the octagon in her glasses, like the 8-sided glasses? Her glasses have octagon rims. The light fixtures in her office are octagons.
I did not know.
So everything in her office has like an octagon shape.
So, like, what a great reveal that is when Catherine Hahn is.
And she is great.
Doc
I love her.
So I love the fact that Doc Ock was a woman.
Right. Yeah. Well, what's so brilliant that the way that's set up is, one, we're first introduced to her on the TV screen in the classroom because she's giving a presentation to Miles about the possibility of a multiverse, and that's why he's able to guess when he encounters Peter B. Parker. So you have that, and you can see it says like Olivia O. That's as much of this name you get. But when Peter B. Parker is talking to Miles about breaking into Alchemex, and he's like, okay, and then I'm going to go get that scientist. And Miles goes, oh, but that scientist is a woman. And he goes, oh, well, I got to get rid of my preconceived notions. I'm such a jerk.
Such a great moment.
And then as an audience member, you're like, oh, that's stupid, Parker. And then when it's revealed that female scientist is actually Doc Ock, you go, oh, shit. I should get rid of my preconceived notions as a fanboy.
And one thing she says, I didn't notice this the first time either. She says, my friends call me Liv. My enemies call me Doc Ock, right? Yeah. When that action sequence happens in Aunt May's living room and Doc Ock busts down the door,
he's like, hey, Liv.
It's Liv.
Yeah.
So
what is
that?
there?
Exactly.
Well, Peter B. Parker's being a dick.
No, they're friends. She said my friends
recognized-
only my friends call me Liv. My enemies call me Doc Ock. When Doc Ock busts in her,
May refers
Yes,
to as Liv.
Aunt
I thought that was
May knows
I thought that was
Liv.
it.
Nope, she says, "Oh, it's Liv."
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
This time
I
it stuck
promise
out
you,
to me.
because I noticed
Dude,
that too.
that totally makes sense because in the original comics, Aunt May and Otto Octavius almost got married. They were lovers.
Is Aunt May bisexual?
They must have had a relationship beforehand. So this Aunt May would have much more knowledge on the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah.
They were friends.
Yeah.
Dude, guys.
Awesome, right?
She is pansexual.
Right?
Aunt May.
So cool. The last thing I'm gonna focus on really, outside of the relation, it's the relationship and the representation of the relationship of Miles's family, whether it be between he and his dad or he and his mother or all of them together, but also specifically the representation of an African American father being a positive and caring and present role model in Miles's life and genuinely caring for him. I just responded to that representation on the big screen. Also, just there were certain moments this time during my rewatch where it would just, I guess, not really occur to me, but it would hit me that this main character is African American. His hair isn't. His hair is he's wearing it naturally. Like he's black. He's unapologetically black, and he's the main guy. He's the main superhero. And my 8-year-old nephew Kyrie, my brother's son, this is his. He gets to see that, and he gets to see someone that looks like him wearing that mask, going through this emotional growth and finding himself and persevering and saying, well, I have to get up. I can help other people. I can be selfless. I can be a hero. I just feel like that is such a profound thing. That is such a profound thing. And it moved me this second time, and that coupled with the representation of that family, a positive representation of that family, a loving family.
A family where both of the parents work.
Both of the parents work, and both of the parents care about the child and the present in the child's life. And I don't know, I just feel like, and what you were saying with Miles looking for the approval of his father, just me personally, that's something that I relate to, because that's all I ever wanted, was my father. And I still do. That's all I ever need is my father's approval. And I'm 42 years old, and I still look for it. And I love the representation of that in this film. So that's all I'm going to say for my good, because like Brad mentioned and everyone else, it's so there's a myriad of things that could go on, the list of good things.
The music, the score,
so good.
Everything. The post-credit sequence.
So fun.
You pointed first. Or 64, was it?
Yeah, 67.
67.
Because of the cartoon.
That's freaking hilarious. I love that.
That's Oscar Isaac.
Yeah. This time, my rewatch, I was moved emotionally on more occasions than I was initially. The first time, it was just excitement and giddiness.
Well, you had to be cool with me.
I'm not crying in front of you before me.
Yeah, we've cried together.
Okay.
He hasn't had the "Won't you be my neighbor" bonding experience that you and I have had.
Yeah.
We've gotten real.
Yeah, that's true. It's coming. We'll get there, B. All right, Brian, the bad.
This will be real short. This is more like a nitpick. I'll talk to you about this.
It's found out.
Well, I did too.
Okay.
I did too when I saw
You got
it.
the answer? Okay,
with
good.
the whole Gwen.
Yeah.
What? Oh,
No,
yeah. We
just
talked about it before the recording.
Yeah, the timeline of like when she came into his dimension. So
What Brian is referring to is that Gwen Stacy is in the Visions Academy before the the main collider blows up.
Yeah.
Well, that we witness as an audience member, but the collider has been exploding before the film even starts.
No. The main explosion.
Yeah.
That's the one that affects her. She says in her origin story, okay, let's start one more time.
But she comes back a week before.
It knocked me back a week.
Right. It's space and time.
Right. So it's the same explosion. It just knocked her back a week in
Right,
time.
right.
So that's how she got.
Yeah, because when she sees that news feed, it's the one where it says Peter Parker saves instead of like it's not him when he died, it's when he saved. So it was earlier. So yeah. I mean, I don't know if it. Well, yeah, but I see what happened. So it wasn't.
It's the space time.
Yeah, I know. Space and time. Yeah, it's comic books.
It fries your brain.
Comic books. No, my only, I guess, nitpick we'll say is the design of the Kingpin.
Oh, I love it.
It was.
It is ridiculous, and I love it.
Yeah, like I said, it's just. It looks like he's got the hunchback. And
It looks like somebody dressed up their knuckle as the Kingpin.
I mean,
it's like when you were a kid, you would just draw a little face on your knuckle.
Yeah.
It's part of my. It would be in my good as well. I loved how this film embraced cartooning and caricature.
Yeah.
When the Kingpin shows up, it is a shock because I mean he's
massive.
Like he looks like this
huge.
giant chunk of Play-Doh.
Yeah.
With his tiny little head. It's so goofy and. When Darren and I watched it the first time, there was definitely lots of laughter whenever he would show up.
Yeah.
But I love the way the film uses his bulk on close-ups, and the way his head just is centered by the blackness of his body.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Like especially when you saw close-ups of him, and it's just like the whole screen is black with his face right there. It's
And the fact that he was so physically intimidating, because when he would go with his fists like to destroy Spider-Man, all he had to do is one thump of both of his fists, and he was destroyed.
And that's what I felt. Even when he kills Peter Parker in the dimension that Miles is in, that's
Chris Pine
pretty.
Parker.
Yeah, Chris Pine. That's pretty brutal. And even when he's fighting Miles at the end, I mean, when Miles is throwing those, when Miles is throwing those punches and he catches it, I'm like, man, he could just break his arm easily. But yeah, I mean, that's just a minor nitpick. Was just his design. I just thought it was like, it just kind of caught me off guard. But again, Lee Schreiber, and then also his story, like why?
is this a bad or is this a good?
No. That's
I'm jumping on your bandwagon.
No, that's my good. But I was just, since we're talking about the Kingpin, like especially I was telling Darren this coming off of Daredevil and the performance that D'Onofrio gives with Kingpin, making him a very empathetic character with the character of Vanessa. That really kind of being everything that kind of like motivates him. And to see that crossed over into this film, you really buy into why he's trying to do this whole thing with the Collider to bring his family back. Like I bought into his love for Vanessa and his child and him losing them and stuff like that. So
and
I
then
don't know,
him fighting with Spider-Man as they are coming into this our timeline and how re-traumatizing that is for him. He's a really pathetic person, and you really feel for him in that moment. A sympathetic villain in an animated film that you can watch with children.
I know.
Did not have to be done. That is literally going above and beyond, and it is so awesome.
It is. You don't see that a lot, and I thought that was really, really effective, especially for a character like the Kingpin to do that with him.
And the Kingpin can be a very uninteresting character.
It can be. So, yeah, that's my only little nitpick that I have. I mean, this movie is pretty much flawless. But
I think that's a pretty cool way to go, though, for Spider-Man villains. for a first film.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Using that character.
he's like this gangster type character.
Like
It's a
they
very
could have
grounded.
just gone and done the Green Goblin again.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad they didn't.
Yeah.
Even though, like, but to your point, with the character design, the Green Goblin is a dragon.
Yeah.
And that I appreciate.
Yeah.
And so, like the Scorpion is insane. Like the design of the Scorpion, like
True.
they were really pushing what they had as an art form.
Even the Prowler is striking. That audio cue.
That
audio cue.
I've
when he comes
never
around.
liked the Prowler. Even in the Miles Morales comic books, I don't like the design of the Prowler. Suddenly, I'm like, that Prowler's awesome.
And his sound effect, like
Crazy.
So good.
So good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's powered by the Hans Zimmer Inception sound.
It's so striking though. It's imposing. It's scary, especially that sequence when he comes home and Peter's in the house. And he's with the reveal.
So good.
So good.
Wife Dork the bad.
The only way I was going to do bad is I was going to go cutesy with it. Like, Peter B. Parker is in such bad shape when he shows up to.
Well, you wouldn't be wrong.
I really have zero complaints about this movie. I saw a perfect film. There's nothing I would change. There's nothing I'd improve upon. It's a perfect film.
Yep.
But if I may go cutesy with it, I love how bad Miles is at being Spider-Man for most of the movie. Like a lot of these, especially chosen one movies like Harry Potter or Hunger Games.
Matrix,
yeah, where it's just like
The hero is great.
The hero is great, and they're great from the beginning, and they continue to be great.
Like you lucked up finding him.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, he is so shitty at being a hero.
Well, and he's consumed with doubt.
And he's so tremendously vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the, heart of this movie is, he wants to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's heard the slogan, right? He doesn't need to hear it again.
Yeah.
But, he's just like he needs to find that right motivation, and they let him really look for it for most of the movie. And I thought that's something I've never seen before.
When he finally puts that costume on, he's on the roof and he's on that glass and he jumps off. And that shot that's in the trailer,
it's so beautiful.
And it goes upside down. Like I had these goosebumps right here. I had them both times I saw it. So good.
And I love how they play off the whole no expectations, great expectations, with them having to write
and
that
that's
essay.
a theme.
Yeah.
That's a theme for young Miles Morales and a theme for Peter B. Parker because it was the weight of the expectations on him, the expectations to be the best Spider-Man he could be, to be a hero, the expectation to be a good husband, the expectation to perhaps be a father is what destroyed him and what really made him scared. And he was unaccustomed to being scared. He was supposed to be this powerful guy.
Yeah. And when he takes his own advice at the end, no, that's right. It's a leap of faith. No expectation, just a leap of faith. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That pays off in that moment as well.
Yeah. So
good. Yeah. All right, B. Rhetorical question? The bad?
No, I found the bad.
Yeah?
There's a bad. In the spider cave, when they go to Aunt May's house and they go down, we see the spider buggy and all the costumes. There's a wall of mugshots, and you can see the Scorpion there. And, Peter Parker has been tracking the movements, and you see Hammerhead, you see an article about the Green Goblin, and then you see an image of a little-known Spider-Man villain called the Rose. It's a guy in a suit. He's got a rose on his jacket, and he's wearing a purple mask. That is Richard Fisk, the son of the Kingpin, but he's dead in this timeline. So how can Richard Fisk also be the Rose? And he's a teenager. That photo didn't look like a teenager. Terrible movie.
Oh my goodness. Maybe he just, because the things that came through on the timeline, like he could have just been thrown back a week or thrown forward.
You're saying it's a different Rose?
Yeah.
Dimensional shenanigans. You're right. Back to being great again.
Yep.
So that was actually in there?
Yeah, you can see the Rose. Who's this? I got it on the Wikipedia page, actually. I had to go and double check to make sure. I thought Richard Fisk was the Rose, and we saw the Rose in that mugshot.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Of course, in this timeline, also, the Rose could not be Richard Fisk; it'd be somebody else.
Yeah.
But you see this little guy. You can't see. Listeners, go to Wikipedia and you can look up what the Rose is. You see a little image of him up on the mugshot.
Okay.
Right below Hammerhead.
All right. I do have a bad. Like, it's not that. I mean, it's a genuine bad.
It's not an asshole bad.
No.
Or a cutesy bad.
No.
Or a nitpick bad.
No, it actually has to do with the animation style. It has to actually do with something we talked about earlier. It's not even. I came to the realization actually on the way over here that I guess it's not really a fault of the movie. So that thing that we spoke about regarding the use of blurring the background or doubling the images to create the depth of field and focus, right? Yeah. Like Brad mentioned, it confused us. Brad and I thought we were watching the 3D version of the film by mistake.
We were also watching it from the second row.
The second row. That's true. And so we talked about it afterwards, and I said, I want to rewatch it in either Dolby Prime or IMAX just to see if that was purposeful or if we actually got someone made a mistake and put the wrong projection up, right? So that is a creative choice in the film, but because, and I'm the 3D guy, I'm the 3D snob or whatever, because my brain, when it sees that image, it's been trained for almost half my life to go, okay, you need to put glasses on if you want this to be in focus. It was, again, when I meant what I said, where, because of this is revolutionary, it's going to take some time because we're used to a particular cinematic language. So for me, what I found was happening was I began to get eye strain because I was trying to control it. I would consciously tell myself when I would feel it or notice it, it's supposed to be that way. But my brain kept trying to realign the images on its own, and it was giving me eye strain. I got to the point where I figured out just focus on the subject of the film, whether whoever was front and center in focus, and so I was able to alleviate the eye strain. But because I'm not used to that ended up like causing me some issues. But it didn't anyway affect my enjoyment of the film or my score of the film. If you looked at my letterbox, it is 5 stars and it stays there. It stays that way. That's just something that I guess over time I have to get used to when viewing the film.
So I found it distracting on that first watch, which is why we were talking about it after that first watch. On the second watch, not being so close to the movie, at first I was so prepared to go like, yeah, that was a 3D print that we saw. It was weird looking. But then when it came up, I was like, oh. And then I really paid attention to narratively why something would be in focus or out of focus, and I found it really interesting. But it still was distracting. Like I was still very much concerned with that depth of field. But I love it because it's just something I have not seen before, and combined with all the other radically different visual flourishes that are occurring in the movie. All bonus for me.
Yeah. So you saw this in 3D the first time?
No,
That's what you're saying. No, you did not see it in 3D.
When we saw this version, and when we came out, because characters were blurry in the backgrounds of shots or in the foregrounds of shots, we were confused as if we had seen a 3D print.
That did not occur to me for 1 second. What about you, Brian?
Well, no, because I knew the animation style that they were going for prior to the film coming out, so I knew that it was going to look like that. So yeah.
All right, Brian.
Ugly? Nothing really ugly I can think of about the film. I mean, if I was to maybe twist my arm, I could say maybe just some just a lot of, not a lot, but just some of the deaths in the film. Maybe.
Not the spiders.
No.
Animated spiders. How did you do with the spiders? They don't bother you.
That didn't bother me. As long as they're not the
tarantula.
Oh.
Poor Brian.
They're literally the least threatening spider.
Yeah, they still just creep me out.
They're furry.
Let's stop talking.
Poor Brian.
Oh man. Whew.
They love you though. They don't feel the same way about you.
Yeah, they don't. But no, the Alchemax 42. didn't bother me.
But like when you're saying the deaths, are you referring to like the first Parker
I guess,
or
the Chris Pine Parker when Uncle Aaron gets killed? I mean, you definitely have to have those because they resonate, especially for the characters in the film. But I'm just saying, just probably for kids seeing the film. I don't know. Like I don't have kids, so I don't know.
Yes, I don't care about them.
Jesus. But I do kind of wonder, like, okay, how would a young kid, like, oh, I love Spider-Man, and then they see, that first Spider-Man get crushed.
It's good for them.
I think that death is inherent to crime fighting films.
Well, and storytelling and Disney films. And Brian, I'd suggest listening to Bill and Claire's Excellent Adventures podcast that Billy's been doing.
Yeah, I know.
He just showed Claire the Terminator. Really interesting conversation. She's 9 years old. C is almost 9 years old. She should guest star on Bill and Claire's Excellent Adventures.
I think Claire, not just for a 9-year-old, but for a human being, pretty darn insightful.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember being 9. I mean, 9, that's when RoboCop came out, and I remember seeing RoboCop, and that was pretty violent.
Yeah, and you were traumatized, but you got through it.
I got through it. Predator. I mean, 9 when we were 9, it's a little bit different. But I think, maybe like 5, 6-year-olds. I don't know.
I think you bring up a good point that the film opens with Spider-Man. We all love Spider-Man.
Exactly.
And now we're going to see Spider-Man have his lungs crushed.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, again, it might be kind of forcing it, but it's just something I noticed. They do have some deaths, and the Kingpin just killing Aaron, like the Prowler, like I know, like damn, okay, but I like the fact that the movie takes that risk as an animated film. I like that
I think the movie really puts itself out there.
It does,
and
really
it made $37 million this weekend, which
good.
is not bad.
Not bad.
But I have a feeling word of mouth, is going to carry it longer than your average movie.
Yeah,
especially over the holidays now, Christmas, kids out of school.
Oh yeah.
Wife Dork.
That was going to be my ugly, is like the box office hasn't been so hot. Or maybe how I ugly cried at the death of Peter Parker again, even though it was blonde Chris Pine Peter Parker.
That's the worst
Makes
kind of
me
death.
sad. But I'm going to use this as an opportunity to love on the theme of how, like, even like the idea of multiple universes, and not just how like anybody can be Spider-Man, which we've talked about already, that idea of anybody can put on the mask. But the fact, like in Peter B. Parker's storyline, the idea of in another universe, there is a version of you who is better than you. There's a version of you who is in better shape than you. There is a better
Poor Peter B. Parker.
than you that handles the emotional roller coaster that is being in a relationship. But there is an ideal version of you, and odds are you are not it. But you can make your version of yourself a little better, and you can make those changes. Like the idea of multiverse is something that I think about as a person a lot. Like when I think about like
what Brian's doing in that other timeline.
Yeah, I do. Like as a kid, I've thought about stuff like that.
I went to music school. Like I have a version of me in my head. Well, somebody pursued it harder. Then there's a version of me that was not frightened of auditions, or there was a version of me who stood up for myself when my voice teacher stopped showing up to my lessons. But sometimes I use that idea to go like, well, let that other Lisa have that. You know what I mean?
There's
like
also another Lisa out there who's like a crack addict.
Exactly. But like the thing, or even small decisions, there's a Lisa who ordered the sandwich, and there's the Lisa who ordered the salad, and let the other, this is my
the
path.
Real ugly we're talking about now.
No, but just that idea of you have control over your own life, and all of those there's a myriad of possibilities of people, that that you could be. But there's only one that you are.
I'm gonna eat this salad, but I'm gonna let that other Lisa get that broccoli and cheddar bread bowl.
Yep. It's hard to explain. I
totally get it. I get it.
I find the idea very comforting.
Well, you guys should know that I am the Chris Pine Brad of all the Brads.
Yeah.
This is the best version.
All right.
I agree.
Could they make Chris Pine not handsome even in an animated version ever?
No.
Like,
dude's
dreamy.
The guy is crazy handsome.
He is.
He does not sound ugly.
Well, he was going to be my ugly.
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't think he's.
Well, I
cute.
will dispute that.
No, he is handsome.
He's so handsome.
All right, Brad, you're the ugly.
My ugly was kind of what Lisa was talking about. The idea of Peter B. Parker going to this weird dinner that the Kingpin's putting on where he has all the waiters dressed like Spider-Man and he has Mary Jane there. And you know Mary Jane doesn't want to be there and she knows that Kingpin's a murderous a-hole who probably killed her husband. And then there's Peter B. Parker who sees a younger version of the wife that divorced his dumbass. And he just wants to talk to her. And Gwen's like, no, you can't talk to her. No. And then they have that awkward, really uncomfortable conversation about bread. I think that's like the ugliest and saddest scene in the whole film. So that's my ugly.
All right.
And then seeing 1967 cell animation at the post-credit sequence.
That was great.
Spider-Man 2099
Only the arm
goes
animated.
back to the beginning to 1967 and reenacts a meme for the post-credit sequence. That's the ugly meme culture invading my movie.
Gotcha.
So good though.
It's so good. It was. My ugly actually goes to what Brian was talking about, and it stuck out to me this time. There were multiple kids flanking me left and right, that entire row in front of me. That scene when Miles goes to Peter's grave at night and you see the memorial, you see all the flowers laid out around it. Knowing that in real life, Spider-Man is the most recognizable superhero in the world, knowing that these kids sitting in this auditorium with me know and love this Spider-Man, and seeing them see him die, and that the tombstone, I don't know, like that was, like
it's
Brian
heavy.
said, it was really heavy, and I can't imagine, like, if Spider-Man was my favorite superhero, and in the opening of the movie, like, he dies. Like, that's rough, and now I have to follow. It's like, you know what? It's like Transformers the movie when Optimus Prime dies, and now I'm following Hot Rod and the passing of the torch. I cried
Miles
in the movie
Morales
theater.
is no Hot Rod. How dare you?
I'm saying Spider-Man is Optimus Prime was my Spider-Man when I was little, and that motherfucker, they killed him.
That is true.
And I cried in that theater.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait, what? What is going on? Like, you can't kill him.
They destroy Prime.
It did. And so, the kids in the theater with me, I was just wondering, like, what they were feeling. And two of them I heard. Like, it bothered them.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have to give, I don't want to discount the intelligence of children and what they consume media-wise on YouTube or whatever, and them understanding that, because they were talking. So that scene happens. A shadow drops down behind Miles. There's a slight musical cue to make you think it's the Prowler, but then it's revealed that it's Peter B. Parker. One of the kids who was just, affected by the loss of, Chris Pine, Peter Parker, goes, that's a Spider-Man from another dimension, another universe. So he's aware that, this Spider-Man might be dead, but I'm going to have a Spider-Man in this movie. So, but still, that was a heavy scene, and that's a heavy moment in the film that has... the moment with Uncle Aaron was moving.
The imagery of the cemetery with all the candles, and then at May's house, the fact that when we're reintroduced to May answering the door saying, like, it's really sweet of you guys, but I need to be left alone. And then you see all the candles and the cards there. Like, we've seen that imagery in real life when, celebrities pass away or a traumatic event happens. And it is like... That's a real image to put into this film.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a very honest movie.
Yeah. One last thing I want to talk about is one of the Penny Parker when her robot dies. I mean, we don't really spend a lot of time with with Spider-Ham, Penny Parker, and Spider-Man Noir. We don't really spend a lot of time with them, but they still give those characters moments. And knowing that that robot was from her father who had passed away, and when that robot gets destroyed, and
eyes.
and her reaction to that, I mean, that's a sad moment that really does kind of hit you, and it's really effective too in the film, especially watching it this time around. So I thought that was a great moment for Penny Parker as well.
Yeah, you know, Spider-Man Noir gets his moments. He's got some good moments. Spider-Ham gets a really great action scene.
Yeah,
that mallet.
So good.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could not tell, we absolutely love and adore this film. It is a tremendous, tremendous creative accomplishment from all parties involved. As an artist, as someone who draws, I was astonished. The first watch, Brad, when the end credits are going, the music's playing, they're doing all this, the colors and everything. We were just high off the film, right? This second go around, I'm paying attention to all that, and even in the end credit sequence, it is astonishing the level of creativity that is on display.
And there's storytelling that's happening in those credits.
Of course. And so, this film is amazing. And please, please, please do yourself a favor. Support this film so that there can be more. There can be more risk-taking with storytelling. We are 20, like Brad, you said it, we're 20 years into the superhero film. We have the superhero films now ending with a snap of the finger and the bad guy triumphant at the end. We're pushing boundaries in storytelling. We're introducing new characters, and we're introducing them and having origin stories done in new and fresh ways, so that this genre, subgenre, whatever you want to classify it as, can continue to be relevant to us and interesting. And they're doing an amazing job with this film. So please go check this movie out and support it. And yes.
Yeah. Now I was going to say to some of the listeners who may think that, it's bad podcasting, that we all agree. Sorry, but yeah, the film is great.
We did have that one troll with that said, well, they just all loved a movie and then congratulated each other about it. But guess what? Congratulations, you guys. We saw an amazing movie, and we are cool enough and smart enough
if you
to notice.
Like this review cast, may I also recommend our review cast of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice and Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yeah. So we'll disagree on some other movies, but this one, it's A's
like
all
Leprechaun Returns.
The movie's great, not top 10. Get ready.
He was like, Lisa, don't even walk past this movie.
Lisa came home like halfway through the film, and I was just like, I'm just going to shut it off.
I'm just going to turn it off.
I'll start it back up when she leaves.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, follow the podcast at ItModcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you've seen the film, let us know what you thought. You can follow this guy at the Turtle Dork on Twitter, at the Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. What you looking forward to this week?
Aquaman, Bumblebee. I know you guys saw it. Even Mary Poppins.
That's this weekend?
Yeah, man. This comes out Wednesday, so looking forward to a lot.
All right. Wife Dork is at Sidewalk Siren and at Bake Dork on Twitter and Instagram. She's also at Sidewalk Siren on Letterboxd if you care about her ratings. What are you looking forward to this weekend?
All of the things Brian said, I've already seen. I'm looking forward, frankly, my most anticipated movie in this moment is watching Into the Spiderverse again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pete Holmes has a new HBO special that I'm really looking forward to. And, just living life, maybe or maybe not making a gingerbread house.
Yes. Yay.
She's not going to do it.
I'm not going to do it.
All right, Mel.
I don't have time. I'm a very important podcaster.
Well, I hope you find the time, because I would love gingerbread house.
I know. I need to fatten Darren right back up.
Please. Brad, what are you looking forward to this week? Oh, wait. You can follow him at MouthDork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. Please proceed.
I'm right there with Lisa. I can't wait to watch Into the Spider-Verse again.
Yeah.
I've written so much around this film. I have 5 or 6 articles at this point on Film School Rejects. I did the review for them. I did a guide to all the characters you see in this movie. I have a a wish list of other Spider-Men to appear in the next sequel.
I read that one. That was good.
Yeah, thank you. Immediately when I did that list, I gave myself, well, these are the 5 other Spider-Men I'd like to see. And then somebody on Twitter was like, but you didn't say this person. And I was like, damn it, you're right. I wanted Spiders Man. Do you know about Spiders Man?
No.
Disgusting.
So Spiders Man is the radioactive spiders consumed Peter Parker, and it's Brian's worst nightmare.
His skin's gonna crawl.
It's all spiders in a suit, like walking around like like when DuckTales, when the 3 cousins would all dress like an adult. It's just like 100 spiders walking in unison
Brian's
in a uniform.
face right now.
It's Spiders Man.
Wow.
They're not the T word.
No, that could be okay, but that's just still.
Meg Shields, my FSR cohort, reminded me of that character, and I was like, shit, why is that not on my list?
I still haven't seen If Beale Street Could Talk. Are we going to get to see that movie?
We should be able to see it before the recording of the Dorkies.
I hope so.
We won't have seen it this week.
Boo.
But, the not top 10, I'm crazy excited to record that, as always.
Yeah. All right.
Darren, what are you excited about?
I am excited to see Into the Spider-Verse in 3D. I'm also excited to see
Aquaman. Come on,
Aquaman and the opening of Bumblebee again. Actually, watching Bumblebee again in its entirety. I'm sorry if I'm selling the rest of the film short. I don't mean to do that. But just the opening of that movie is everything I needed it to be, and so yeah.
The rest of it's fine.
Should I get bangs? Every time I
Yes.
watch a movie with a girl with bangs, I'm like, could that be me?
Yes.
In another universe,
Another
it
universe
is. And she's eating a broccoli and cheddar bread bowl
Oh my
and smoking a crack pipe.
Oh no!
shit.
I was about to say she's living her best life till you threw that bit of.
She might be in her mind.
Jesus. All right.
But does she look cute in her bangs?
Yes.
Gabby said I could get them.
Do it. You can follow me at the Disco Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Tap. That's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. At the end of the week, we have a fistful of men in the ocean?
Men in water.
Men in water.
Waterman.
Watermen in honor of Aquaman.
Men in aqua.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. And until next time.